Bluer by the Lake is sponsored by Kitchen Beautician Beauty, Hope and Hops, and Candidate Playbook, the practical candidate training system for women. Candidate Playbook is offering a special discount to Bluer by the Lake listeners. Just use the code BLUER10INTRO at checkout.
When you run for office in a small market, everyone assumes you know what to do to get elected. The problem is, nobody ever taught you those skills. Developing strategies for managing volunteers, raising money, working a candidate event, handling a media interview, and building a platform are not optional. These are the mechanics of an actual campaign, and most small market candidates are figuring them out alone. That's where Candidate Playbook comes in. Candidate Playbook has guides and workbooks covering all of it. Written specifically for candidates in smaller markets where party infrastructure is thin and professional consultants are either scarce or way out of budget. Candidate Playbook is the ultimate cheat code for small market candidates running for public office. Practical, specific, and built for the race you're actually in, not the one the big national organizations have in mind. Browse the guides at shop.candidateplaybook.com. And when you're ready for your next race and want to go in with more clarity and a real plan, the full training is at candidateplaybook.com. Candidate Playbook, the whole package for local and regional candidates.
Oh, hello, NWI. Welcome to Bluer by the Lake, the podcast that explores region life through a blue lens. I'm your host, Tracy Martin, and I know I say this basically every episode, but I am so excited about this show today. So, okay, in case you're listening to this instead of watching, let me tell you that a full spectrum of talented, educated, bright women are filling the screen right now. I'm pumped about this, folks. They represent generations of work to increase women's participation in government, and it's just so thrilling to see that in action. Women are here and we're here to win. And if you're one of the record numbers of women Democrat candidates on the ballot, these women are here to help by sharing the challenges they've experienced, the exciting joys they've found, and all of their top line advice on simple, easy actions every time and money stretched candidate can take to forward their campaign. All right, so folks, grab your iced coffee or an iced tea if that's your bag, or a beer if you're listening while you're waiting for my friend Buffy Adams to get started on her next Hope and Hops off Square Brewery. Grab the QR code at the end of the show, folks. And with no further ado, let me introduce you quickly to up the panel, folks. We've got Jen Wilson of Cherville. She's running for Lake County Council District 4. We've got Jessica Bailey of Valparaiso. She's running for Indiana State Controller. Yay! And then we've got Kuba Kebe for Indiana State Treasurer. Kuba! And then I'm so hoping you recognize this lady, but if you don't, you've got Karen Talion, legendary chair of the Indiana Democratic Party State Central Committee. Ladies, thank you so much for joining us and sharing your expertise. I know everybody's busy on the campaign trail. It is a tight race, and it's an important race. In some ways, maybe the most important race of our generation, because we finally have a chance to knock down the supermajority that's strangled our state for the last 20 years.
Mhm.
A spoiler alert, folks, women are running for office. Who knew? Particularly Democrat women. And a record number of them. Right now, as of the last research that I did, we have 364 Democrats running for the House of Representatives.
Wow.
And those numbers could just go up. Karen, what is your take on how this is playing out in Indiana? Are we seeing the same sorts of record numbers of women running for office here?
Well, let me just say, first of all, we're seeing the record numbers of candidates running. We have out of 100 candidates in the House, I think we're at 97. Out of the 25 seats in the Senate, Democrats have offered 25. I don't have all the numbers, I'm sorry, on how many of them are women, but at this point, I'm going to say at least half. So we have not seen these kinds of numbers since 1974. And I'm hoping that everybody here knows. I mean, I'm an old woman, but everybody here should know what happened in 1974, which was the Watergate scandal with Richard Nixon. And the Democrats came in with a a major sweep, swept everything across the country. So, judging by the numbers of candidates that we've got right now, we've got something really special going on in Indiana.
And it's been a long ground game to get there. What strategies have you been employing to bring this about?
Well, I would like to tell you that it's all about my strategy, but it's not. It is not. This has truly been a grassroots movement of people calling me and saying, or, I'm sick of this. I want to run. Can I run for something? And not just calling me. I mean, I can't tell you how many people I had call me wanted to run for Congress, but also calling county chairs. So yeah, we spend a lot of time recruiting candidates, but I'm just telling you, this is a grassroots movement. People are mad. You can feel it in the air as we go across the state. We've been from the Northeast to the Southwest, and every place we go, people are angry. They want to do something. And, and this is a real up from the bottom move.
Let's turn to our candidates here. Kumba, what was your rationale for jumping into the fray?
I mean, it's exactly what Karen said. People are mad. And I'm an executive and I own a small business. And for nearly 10 years, I worked with seniors and caregivers. And for the last couple years, I've watched policy decisions and financial decisions made at the State House that have negatively impacted the people I serve directly, people in my community. And after advocating against all these changes, I was ignored. Uh, and so that frustration led me to saying, enough is enough. What can I do to help? And I advocated outside for the space for a long time and it didn't work. And so I was like, you know what? If you won't do your job, I'll audition for it and do it better. So
How about you, Jen?
Well, it's funny. I have to give Donald Trump a smidge of credit here. He's actually what inspired me to get involved and to believe that I don't have to have a law degree or be a career politician to get involved and make a change. I just needed to be somebody that cared enough to dedicate my time to work hard, to stick up for people. Um, and that was my inspiration. I didn't want to sit at home and just complain about what was going on. It's not fair to just sit and complain and say you could do better while you're sitting on your couch drinking a glass of wine or whatever. So I started to get involved and I didn't know what I was doing. I just went. I I got involved in the system. People sometimes they want to tear down the system. I don't believe in that. I think in, working with what we have and improving it. There's always room for improvement, but to start just from scratch is, I believe, silly. So I just, went down to county. I signed up to be a delegate. Then I became a precinct committee person, ran for town council, and now running for county council. And I do have to credit Donald DJT for that.
Yeah,
And I will also say he got a lot of people to vote. I mean, when you are campaigning and you're looking at people's voting records, I mean, there's so many people that never voted until 2016. You could look back years. And so I hope that, you know, good comes out of this after throughout all this pain and suffering.
yeah, that is the one note of grace for these miserable years with Donald
Hmm.
is that he has revealed the fragility of our democracy. I mean,
Yeah.
if it's really when it's held up by the good graces of the people that you see at the grocery store, really shows you what it means and what it
Yeah.
takes to keep it alive. And it's invested people in ways that it made them do things they never would have done. I mean, I wouldn't be doing
Right.
this if it wasn't for Donald J. Trump. Jessica, how about you? What brought you to the table?
I'm a change maker. I have made some changes at the county level. I didn't like the way things were being done, and I got in there and got my hands dirty, made some changes, and I think it's been for the better. People of Porter County have liked it for the better, and I think some things in Indianapolis need changed, and I want to get in there, get my hands dirty, and make some changes.
Well, you know what? And I think the chances that you'll be successful in that are high. Because one thing I just kept seeing over and over in my research is that when women run, they tend to win. Um, Karen, why do you think that is? What are candidates and women legislators bringing to the table?
I think that for Democrats, in a primary, for example, when they don't know people, the Democrats will default to the woman. Uh, and I've seen it, absolutely, I've seen it so many times where, in a primary between two Democrat candidates, the Democrats default to the woman most of the time. It's kind of amazing. I think that women are very successful when they run for office. The problem is that it's harder to convince women to run for office. So many times, women are they're the main caregiver at the house with the children, with all the rest of it. And a lot of times they have jobs. And so I think they are much more careful with giving out their time.
Now, I found it really interesting that you said that when given a choice between two unknowns, voters, particularly Democratic voters, will lean towards the woman. And that is interesting for a bunch of reasons. One of which, and the research that I did into it, it really kind of corroborates that, in that a lot of the stereotypical traits of women tend to dovetail with democratic values. Do you think that that plays into why people are making that default choice?
Uh, I think more women than men vote.
Mm.
So you automatically have that. The other thing that I wanted to say, though, is, and I want to say this to every woman candidate out there. Yeah, there are the default issues that we all think belong to women: healthcare, childcare, education. But let that stop you, because we have a lot of women who are into other, the budget the budget numbers, the finance numbers. And I've got women right here who they're running on issues that are not childcare and healthcare. They're running on show me the money and let's clean it up. So we've got issues for every woman.
Goomba, tell me a little bit about that. Have you felt pressure to focus on more kitchen table or traditional issues where women have assumed some sort of leadership, or are you finding that your messaging naturally lends itself well to other areas of interest for you?
No, I wouldn't say I feel pressured to focus on issues that are traditionally valued by women, because I think what we're finding now is a lot of folks, including women, are asking the same thing from an economic level, which is just like we keep being told by our leaders that our economy is doing well, that our investments are really strong and our returns are great. But when you look at what's happening around the state, everyone is being impacted by a number of things, right? It's not just healthcare anymore. It's not just childcare. It's a combination of high utility rates, a combination of, not having access to childcare, and our local government struggling for resources, our public education system. So it's far greater than just like maybe isolated policy issues that we traditionally used to talk about. Now it's like, okay, we have a systemic issue that we need to answer for. And a lot of people are asking from a taxpayer perspective, like, I pay so much money into the system and it's not coming back to our communities in a way that feels significant and like feels like it's giving back to the people who invest. And so I think the issues are so systemic and it's all around the dollars. And so I think that messaging is resonating across, even political party, across, women and men. It's, everyone is starting to ask the same question from that perspective. So I think that's why, we've kind of moved out of those isolated policy decision conversations. Not to say that they're not important, because they are, but we're starting to
Very.
ask the bigger question, like, how is this system working holistically for everyone?
Jessica, how about you? As you rolled through the ranks, have you encountered Anyone that was like, yeah, that's not really your lane?
Typically, it's more why is your position political is what I'm encountering. And I don't really have that big of an answer for that because there isn't anything political about paying state employees. There isn't really anything political about the writing the invoices. But where it gets political is when you become a member of the finance board. That's when gets political because it's a 3-member board, and that's where you're approving the additional appropriations, which is the additional monies going to the different departments, or the transfers and things like that, where departments may be overexpending their budgets and they want additional monies. Well, why are they expending their budgets too much? And more importantly, why don't they have to explain that? Because that's currently not being done. The minutes for the finance board meetings typically read no discussion, and the board meetings are about 3 minutes long. And that's where I think we need to draw more attention to what's happening in Indianapolis because
Wait. Three minutes
yes,
long?
they're public meetings, they're on
Oh,
YouTube, they're about 3 minutes long, and it's rubber stamped,
oh
yes,
my
transfer, yes, transfer, yes, transfer, with no
God.
discussion.
Well,
So if there is discussion happening, it's not in a public meeting. And the public officials that are on this
and there
board
has to be
are
some.
being represented by proxies. They're not even coming to the monthly meeting.
Wow.
Well, isn't that interesting? Nice work if you can get it. I don't know what to say to that.
I found
I
it interesting
Our
myself.
board of elections, when we have a meeting, it will take an hour,
Yes,
and they talk about every dime.
when I come to the county council because I need an additional
No.
appropriation or I need to transfer money, I have to go and represent that. And they want to know exactly why.
Hmm.
In Indianapolis, apparently it's different.
Well, apparently so. Speaking of Indianapolis, I wanted to turn back, Karen, to recruitment and it being challenging to get women to agree to that. And one of the things that I have encountered when I was digging into this a little bit is that it is not set up for working parents or anyone who does not have a really flexible job to serve at state level offices or even in some local offices. In the state of Indiana, our legislature is part-time, and this is not just our state. Many states operate in this way. So unless you have a flexible job that allows you to easily go and travel and make arrangements, you have people to take care of childcare for you. There's a lot of barriers in place to people with diverse occupations serving. Karen, does that kind of jibe with your understanding of how things are working for candidates here in Indiana?
Well, especially if you want to talk about statewide jobs or legislative jobs. Now, you said something that I'm going to disagree with.
Please.
Yeah, you said that being in the legislature is a part-time job. I am here to tell you it ain't true.
No, it's not. It's
No,
paid
it
like it
it
is.
is not.
They work
I
full
was
time.
I was in the Senate for 16 years, and even when I wasn't in Indianapolis, you constantly are doing things from home. I was an attorney, and I will tell you, in my experience, what it tends to do is to sort people out not by occupation, but by age.
Hmm.
Young people who don't have families yet can do this. People with young kids are much more strapped. I didn't get into the Senate until my kids were grown,
Hmm.
and I didn't have those responsibilities. So for women especially, I think that a lot of them sort out by where they are, not only in their career, but in
All right, candidates, let's turn to you guys. Jen, we haven't heard from you in a minute. So, any of these challenges that I'm talking about, making arrangements around family care, issues with, how can I afford to do this job? Have you encountered any of that?
100%. I was approached maybe a year or so ago about running for state senate seat in my district, District 1. And I'm very passionate about that position, that work. But when I started looking into it, I'm like, I cannot do it. And you hear a lot the buzzwords of, old rich white men making all our laws. And, you're like, this is why. Because like Karen was saying, you have to, a lot of people are retired and you have extra time to run for office because, you're downstate and
I'm so sorry.
you're fine. You're fine.
Hi guys,
I
this
have
is my son
determined,
Gus.
due to the fact, if we have share percent 50% of our DNA with bananas,
It's like perfect timing as we're talking about children.
The best laid plans, right?
We're,
Yeah.
we're kid friendly here. It's fine.
Yeah.
Ben, do you have younger kids?
So I have one in college, and then one is going to be a senior in high school.
All
Okay.
right.
So, my kids, I felt like my kids could handle at this point if I did the job. But when I found out how much it pays,
Yeah.
don't quote me on this exact price, but or salary amount, but it's like somewhere around $36,000 just for your work. Then you get a stipend, but you also have to travel and use that stipend to
Travel.
pay for room and board and food. Now, if you live in Indy, you can drive back and forth from your house and you could
Right.
pocket that money. But if you live in Northwest Indiana, you have to spend that money. So I'm like, I can't afford to quit my job. That's why on the local level, it's a little bit easier for me to run locally. And, I'll still have to work, but I work more part-time and I have flexibility. And I plan to, like Karen was saying, I know this isn't a 2 meeting a month job. Like there's a lot more that goes into it. So you can't work full time. And I mean, I guess you can, but I in good conscience can't. So
But what about you? How are you planning to manage the stresses of that?
I it is a lot. At first I was solely focused on my small business and so I had capacity. And then what happens is you get so engulfed into the campaign that your business slacks. At least for me.
uh-huh.
And so I then had to get a
Uh-huh.
full-time job because the bills still need to get paid. And so luckily for me, I do have a little bit of flexibility with my full-time job, but still, I mean, kind of like Jen, it's like you feel a little guilty, but you're balancing basically two full-time jobs when you're running a campaign, one you don't get
Uh-huh.
paid for. And so for me,
Uh-huh.
the reason why I said yes is because I do have that flexibility because I don't have kids. I'm not married, right?
Good
I
timing for you.
commend you all for doing it, and especially with kids, like, I don't know how you do it mentally. So I, like, have so much respect for moms that do this, but, I mean, it did change my life a little bit, like, I had to transition out of just having a business, and it's not easy. Whether you have
Mhm.
kids or not, it's a challenge.
I'll say one more thing about also making this decision to run is it's so expensive to run. I feel like it's gotten insane to run a campaign, how much money you need to raise. You hear about some candidates that put in thousands of dollars of their own money to run. And I don't have that. I think a lot of great candidates don't have that. And then you do fundraising the best you can, but it's just so much money to run that I think that hinders a lot of great talented people who really care from running.
Well, what a serendipitous seg for me, because that's exactly where I wanted to go next with this. Karen, I know myself, that was my main concern about my own decision to not pursue office right now. Because I'm broke, I can't afford that. And I know that is something when I've talked to potential candidates said that's really on their mind. And I think it might help actually, because I don't understand how the fundraising cycle works. And I think for a lot of newbie candidates, that's the same. Can you kind of give us a primer on how
Yeah.
candidate fundraising goes?
Well, it depends on what level you are, of course. Now, I will tell you that I have run for office, many times over the course of my life. I mean, I ran 4 times in the state Senate. I did a run for Attorney General. I never spent my own money. Okay. I was told that early on in my career, if if you're going to be a candidate, if you're going to try to get people behind you, then you need to have them raise money for you. And if you can't raise the money, then you probably shouldn't be running. It means you have no support, right? There's also nobody giving you money. So we run a whole staff that are the skeleton support for every campaign, but we don't raise money for candidates. The candidates raise their own money. So how do you do that? That is the subject of numerous training sessions that we give. How to make the ask, who to call, where, how you do all of that. Statewide candidates like Bo Bai, I mean, he's got his own thing, and it comes from being a third generation Bai with help from a lot of people that have known his father and grandfather. But we don't have that. So we have to figure out how to raise money. There are also tricks to saving money. We do combined campaign efforts. Jessica and Kumba right now, you're running statewide campaigns. You cannot count on knocking on doors. Jen, you're going to be knocking on doors because you're running a local effort, but you don't need as much money because your universe of voters is smaller. The whole thing, it really is dependent on what office you're running for. Now, House Dems, Senate Dems, those caucuses raise money and they will help their candidates. But it's very complicated.
I see. So, alrighty. Well, one thing that was interesting was the cost saving, like spending smarter. Jessica, have you found any tricks for that as you are hitting the campaign trail?
You try to manage the most out of your day. So if you're going into one area, you try to make a couple of stops in the same area instead of being like a ping pong ball going across the state as many times as you can. You try to hit the same geographic territory in multiple stops. So you're knocking out one area all at once.
That's awesome. Kumba, how about you? What have you encountered tip wise that you can share with new candidates?
I think a couple things that I've learned is I have an extraordinary campaign team that is doing unpaid work. It's actually crazy how much people do behind the scenes in the political world without pay just because they believe in your vision and they believe in you. And I think that's one of the key things is trying to find people who are willing to invest some time in you until you can get to a point to actually pay them is key because every dollar early on matters a lot. And so I'm just super grateful to have so many people that are willing to offer their time and support to help me get this campaign off the ground running with no pay. So that's one, is try to save as much as you can early on and try to get really good people around you who are willing to support. And two, I learned very quickly that you cannot be afraid to ask. I know we struggle with money in politics, but the reality is Indiana hasn't won statewide in 2 decades because we typically don't have resources. So we have to make the ask. And so I spend any free time I have calling people on a call list in which my finance director put together and basically trying to tell them my vision and getting them to buy into our vision. They're not donating to me, they're donating to the campaign and the vision and the investment. And so getting over that hump and fear of asking for money is really, really important if you're going to run a serious campaign.
Jen, how about you? Have you had to kind of reorient your comfort level to making asks that you wouldn't necessarily have made otherwise?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's never easy to ask people for money who are already struggling, paying extra on NIPSCO bills and gas. And so I ran for town council in 23, and that was a little easier for me to ask. But this year, because we do have so many great candidates running, it's like we're all pulling from the same people and we're trying to work together, like Karen and the other ladies have said, combining flyers and stuff like that to cut costs. We're trying to organize strategies so multiple candidates can walk at a time. to keep those finances in the back of our head and help everyone. Because when I say it's so expensive to run, I think that the bar of how much it takes to run just keeps going up and up with perhaps the PAC money. At the midterm, there was 3 flyers sent for the Republicans. I don't even really know what the message was. It was kind of like, we need Republicans out to vote. They were kind of bashing Dan Durnall, but also putting Democrats on, the flyer as if we're the ones that have all this money, this DC money coming in. And it's like, it's not the Democrats sending it. 3 flyers to my house, who's a strong Democrat. I would never be able to send flyers to a strong Republican's house because I don't have the money to just send out literature at that broad of, a spectrum. So that's making it harder. And so you have to ask people, they have to have faith in you. You hope that you're all aligned on the mission, like Kumba said. And that's hard enough, but it's just doing the best what you can with that money. That's like the tricky part at this time because the Republicans have so much more money coming in. It's like they spend 3 times, no matter what level they're at, they spend like 3 times more than the Democrats.
One thing that I wanted to be sure that we touched on is some of the gendered expectations of women's behavior and appearance as they're moving through their campaigns. There used to be a very long-standing impression that women had to present as masculine. We all know what happened to Hillary. And it feels like those vibes have been shifting away from that. But then, and I thought, maybe we were past that. But then, Caitlin Holly came along and she's making posts about people criticizing her teeth. And I was like, oh my God, we're still here in the year of our Lord 2026. Women are still facing this kind of criticism. Karen, are those attitudes still prevalent in our state?
Yes, they are. Indiana, as you know, it tends to be fairly moderate, fairly conservative. I'm not the clothing police, but I think you do have to present a professional appearance. Professional appearance doesn't mean you need to wear a 3-piece suit. I mean, I quit doing that as an attorney. I had to do that. And, I once had a woman judge, complain to me that I wasn't wearing nylons. It was, and I wasn't wearing nylons, and she called me out on that. And I was like, "Are you kidding me?" So there is still some of that, uh, but I do think you have to be professional. But professional doesn't, like I said, mean that stereotypical 3-piece suit. I don't see anybody here with a 3-piece suit.
Jessica, let's start with you. Have you found yourself with any difficulties with the way you present yourself in public? Do you feel like you can be yourself?
I do, but I I mean, I've been in the public eye for a couple years now, so it's not anything that I'm not used to. I'm used to going to election board meetings, I'm used to going to county council meetings, and when you go to those meetings, they expect a professional type dress, and it's a form of respect. If you go to those meetings in jeans and a t-shirt, they take that as disrespect because you didn't care enough to dress professionally to come and address them. And so I just look at it as respectful when I'm going someplace to just look business casual at least.
How about you, Kumba?
I kind of just take the same approach that I've always taken in my career, which is like, I'm going to do me. I lean into my femininity. I like to wear dresses. I like to wear color, and I'm not going to let running for office change that. But there is a level of professionalism, obviously, for certain audiences, but I also think that you also need to know like when to meet the moment. If you're going to a fair, don't show up in like a suit or in a dress. Like meet the moment and be approachable, right? And so there are times where I find myself like, oh, should I wear that or should I change? Should I wear this? Like I do kind of overthink sometimes, but then I just trust my instinct too and then just own it, right? I don't think Bo has to really think much about what he wears when he shows up places. So I try to think about that and just remind myself of that. But then I think for me, what I struggle most with is not people necessarily talking about my outfits. It's especially as a Black woman, I think there's another level to it where, people question your qualifications. No one questions a man's qualifications. So I think there is still a lot of that. But that's where we just have to be mentally strong and know that that is unfortunately still a part of our society. And we're kind of breaking that by just running and being visible and being ourselves. So.
Jen, how about you? What are your thoughts on this one?
I find something that I struggle with more as a female candidate is being heard. Like when I talk, I think a little bit of it is I do have a soft voice. And when you're in a room that's, mostly men at the table making the decisions and stuff, sometimes to be heard over those voices, and especially if it's like a debate, you have to talk, louder.
Does that feel weird when you're doing it?
Yeah, it does. It does feel a little weird because sometimes, like, I'll say stuff and I feel like they look at me with like a blank stare. And some of it could be, me, stepping into a new role, but I feel other women have experienced that too. Like, just, what do I do with this female voice that I'm hearing right now? So I think for me, that's been more of a struggle. um I actually, when I'm with people who I trust and I have a relationship, I do get loud. That's just kind of how the banter is back and forth, and I have fun with it. But when you're on a new board or in a new position, you have to kind of figure that out. um and I kind of think that women have a little few more challenges with that
Mhm.
than men do. But
This is
like I said,
interesting.
maybe it's just me.
I worked in tech for 15 years. It's not you.
Okay.
I've been at tables where, like, it was like I was a potted plant. You need to do extra for them to listen to you. We can
Hmm.
dig into the dynamics of that for the rest of our lives, but the facts on the table are that if you want to be heard in a room full of men talking, you have to adjust the way you speak and how loudly you speak and where your body is. There's a lot of dynamics to play with. Jessica, so how about you? Have you had to, as you've wandered up through the boards and moved through the cycles, have you
Yeah,
found yourself having to do that?
absolutely. I'm the only female on the election board, and even
Mm.
when we go to budget hearings, typically I'm one of the few females. And so when I'm taking it all in and I listen and I absorb what's being said, but when I feel like it's my turn to talk, it's my turn to talk, and it's my turn to get my point across and say what I have to say and advocate for my department and my constituents and my employees. And that's my job, and that's what I have to do. And a lot of times I think they're surprised at the voice that comes out because they're not always ready for it.
That they're not. So, Karen, you know, chime in here because obviously you've come up through the ranks and you know exactly what we're talking about. How have you adjusted and
Well,
what have you seen over the years?
so I'm in a little bit different position because I was a trial attorney for 20 years before I ever did this. And so I often found myself, look around a room and I'm in a deposition with eight guys and I'm the only woman. So I got over that a long time ago before I ever got into public life and public speaking. But, being an attorney and advocating for clients is not that much different from being in politics and advocating for your group. I find that, I mean, when I'm quiet, it's because I'm listening, and especially I'm listening if it's something that I don't know about. I think that if you know your subject matter, then there's a confidence that comes with with what you're going to say, and it just sort of takes over. So that's my first advice is, you know, listen until you know what you're talking about, and don't talk just to talk. Talk when you when you have something authoritative to say, and then people will listen to you when they realize that, oh, she knows what she's talking about. And once you get that reputation, it builds. Oh, we're going to listen to her because she usually knows what she's talking about, you know? And that's something that you have to acquire over a period of time.
Kumba, how about you? Have you struggled with this?
Would say early in my career, yes, I did. I really struggled with speaking up, but I was actually mentored by men. Most of my mentor in my career were white men, so I had a lot of audacity most of my career because they just taught me how to do that. But I say that as a joke, but really they created space for me in rooms where I was uncomfortable to speak up, and they kind of had my back, and that gave me the confidence when I needed it. And then kind of like Karen said, like I make sure that I know my stuff so that when I speak about it, there's no way you can flip this around and try to make me seem like I don't know what I'm talking about. So I do listen a lot, but I think for me early on, it was just a lot of leaders created space for me. They kind of advocated for me. They had my back. And so I was able to work through those fears early on in my career. And now I have no problem taking up space in a room because we have to.
So let's turn to one last issue that I think it's important that we address before we get into some last minute advice for people up and down the ballot. And that's on getting harassed as candidates. I know it's not something we all like to think about, but it happens, and it happens more often to women than men. We are in very polarized environments, and nobody wants them to stop them. But we need to think about things like that. Jessica, Jen, or Kumba, have any of you guys been targeted for harassment online, in person, anywhere along the way, along your career?
No.
I wouldn't say harassed. No.
That's very comforting to hear. Karen, what is your sense of how, the dynamics in Indiana? I mean, I know a lot of this harassment happens at really high levels of politics. Have we been seeing Indiana candidates getting targeted?
During my whole time in the Senate, I would always get 1 or 2 letters each session about how you are stupid, 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 you know, and we would post them on the wall for everybody to sort of read and look at. But now, where I find now the whole harassment has become social media based. People will say crap on social media that they would never say to your face. I didn't really get it so much when I was in the Senate, but as state party chair, I've gotten it some. There's some name calling pretty blatant about me and the Democrats and whatever. But I've just noticed in the past couple years that the talk on Facebook or social media, wherever, has gotten increasingly nasty.
Do you have advice for any candidates that might be concerned for their families?
Well, I don't know if anybody just read Pete Buttigieg's story about what happened to him,
That's
which
where I'm
was
going with
just
this.
awful, just awful. Now, I will tell you that at one point during the gerrymander debate, when a couple of people were the victims of swatting, the Republican state party chair and myself put out a joint, she's a woman, put out a joint statement saying, you know, this is awful. People shouldn't be doing this. And the next day, we both had swattings calls at our houses. I live in a small town where I know everybody, and I happened to be on Thanksgiving vacation, and so there was a police call to my house saying that, you know, that I had just shot my husband. So, so my local town sheriff said, "Wait a minute, that's Talian's house. She doesn't have a husband, and she's gone." So they stopped that SWAT before it actually got to my house. But yeah, there's just no excuse for that kind of crap. It's awful. It doesn't happen often.
Yeah, that's the impression I'm getting, that it's not common. And anyone I've ever talked to about this has always been like, well, you know what? Yes, that's on my mind, but I'm not going to let that stop me from doing what I think is right.
That's right.
Kumba, is that something is this resonating with
Yeah, I mean, that's exactly my take. I think people do that because they want you to be afraid and they want us to be afraid of standing up and doing something. I'm going to take the proper precautions that I need to take. I've got a security system and protection and, great neighbors. That stuff is scary, but I'm not going to let it stop me from doing what I'm supposed to do because we need to keep pushing and fighting through all of this. And I'm sorry that happened to you, Karen. I didn't know.
Yeah, I didn't either.
I didn't know until I came home.
Yeah. I mean, I can
Yeah.
only imagine how scary that is, but thankfully I haven't experienced that. And like Karen said, even in, places where you are, like I was just in Tippecanoe County and I was talking to a lot of Republicans. I mean, people are friendly in person. They truly are. And I
Mhm.
try to remember that we're more alike and there's more good of us, like more good people than bad uh, even though social media can skew that a lot.
How about you, Jessica?
Mhm.
When I was on the school board, some of the teachers like to send messages to me through my kids. So
Oh,
I would just,
whoa
yeah,
to that.
yeah, I would just send them emails back and inform them of the correct way to get a message to me. They were never like threatening or
Oh,
violent or anything like that. Just, especially when contract negotiations were coming up, just, if we want more time to do things, then per- perhaps they should pay us more and I wouldn't have to have a second job and we get things graded on time or just things like that. Or make sure you tell your mom that we all had to work second jobs over the weekend or things like that. But I think that happens more on a very local level where they know whose kids are in the school system. I know election officials across the country have had things happen to them, but I haven't had anything personally happen to me. The last election, we did have to give Homeland Security all of our information for everyone in the office, just in case when they
hmm.
were talking about swatting attacks and things like that.
Mm.
Luckily, nothing came of it.
How about you, Jen?
Yeah, it's definitely something that you think about, especially with kids, and I draw a very strict line where I'm not going to campaign. I'm not going to do a smear campaign against an opponent because I don't want that to be done to me. I don't think that's how it should be. But, sometimes people will say, oh, you should say this and this. I'm like, no, that has nothing to do with the job that they're doing as, a councilman or whatever. And I'm not going to do that just to make somebody look bad or, to do anything on the personal level. If it's something like they're stealing tax dollars, then maybe I'd campaign on that. But I'm not going to campaign on stuff that's not relevant to the job because I don't want to get into that. I'm choosing to do this. Just don't come after my kids, like and I would never go after anyone's kids or family. And I just hope that that's we put out in their universe what you want to get back. And that's just what I'm hoping for. I think so many people are running because we want this to end. We don't want this kind of stuff to be in our political atmosphere anymore. It's just about serving people, protecting people. That's it.
Well, you know what? Let's make that happen then. Folks, we've got a lot of people to get elected, Jessica. What would be the top piece of advice you'd offer to any candidate just getting started today?
Mm.
Just work as much as you can, make the phone calls, knock the doors, talk to everyone you can about why you're doing what you're doing. And at the end of the day, look yourself in the mirror and know that you did the best that you can and just keep going for it.
How about you, Jen?
My advice would be you're enough. You're the right person for the job. The fact that you care enough to get out there and try to make a difference. And you'll have days where you feel like, what am I doing? Why am I doing this? And that's okay. Just keep going.
How about you, Kumba?
man, we could do so much. So, like, there's so much here. But I think one, talk to a couple of trusted people who have done this before that can give you good strategic guidance. Like, and just because sometimes I think candidates are like, where do I even start? Like, and infrastructure and support is so important. And so for me, I wouldn't be here if I didn't have like a couple of people that I could call all the time and just say, can you help me figure this out? Or can you help point me in the right direction? And then two, just be authentically yourself. I think a lot of things will happen where, you know, the world of politics may try to shift you or make you conform, like we were talking about dressing a certain way and all of these things, but people resonate with authenticity. People feel when you're not being yourself. So just stay true to you and why you got into this work in the first place.
Karen, bring her home.
Okay. Well, I think the biggest advice I would give to any candidate is to ask for help. Ask for help, whether it's dollars, whether it's volunteers, whether it's, can I put a sign in your yard? And don't forget to always ask for their vote.
Mm-hmm.
The other thing is, when somebody offers their help to you, because all the time you will get people to say, well, what can I do to help you? You got to have an answer right then. Can you do a yard side? Can you write 20 postcards for me? Well, my very first election, I had a guy who told me, he said, when somebody asks you that, you tell them yes, and you hand them 20 postcards or letters and say, can you write these for me? Just send these out to 20 people you know. Put the stamp on and send it to 20 people you know. I used to get hundreds of letters or postcards sent out for me just doing that. 100 people and 20 postcards, that's a lot. So when they ask for your help, write down their name and give them a job.
And have to-go kits.
Yes, in your car at all times.
That's great advice. Ladies, I cannot thank all of you enough for joining us today. I think you're going to help a lot of people by sharing all of this tidbits. And folks, so that you guys can know how you can help Kumba and Jessica and Jen, I'll have links to everybody's campaign page on my website, on the show notes for this, and also links to the Indiana Democrat State Party page so that you can find out more information there. Karen, do you have any last asks for everybody listening today?
Yes, please vote. And please bring 10 of your friends. Make sure, I'm just going to say this, 340,000 Democrats didn't come to vote in the last 2024 election. 340 people. We have to find them and harass the hell out of them and get them to the polls this year, because that's what it's all about. So, to all your viewers, that's my ask to you.
Get out and vote. And, hang on one second.
Hello, Mother. It sounds like you're ending.
I'm not quite done.
Oh, I
I
just
think-
wanted to say, I thought you guys were ending because you guys said, Karen, you want to say something before we all say bye? I thought
Yeah,
you were ending.
but
so
I
let's
feel
do
like
my
the-
ending dance.
Oh, you want to do the ending dance real quick? Okay. So I feel like the fact that there was a dresser in front of the door should have been a hot clue that I wasn't quite done.
Oh, yeah.
It's fun. All right, folks. So you heard the lady. There are 340,000 voters that need to get themselves up to the polls. So we are going to be taking that challenge on because we have a chance to make some serious change here in Indiana. And I'm here for that. I'm personally really tired of the Republican supermajority making our state uninhabitable almost at this point. So, folks, help these candidates get to the polls. And if you get up to the lake and you see me there, come say hi. Bye.
Folks, if you enjoyed this episode, take a minute to thank our sponsors, Kitchen Beautician Beauty, Hope and Hops, and Candidate Playbook by visiting their sites. And remember, if you want an ad-free experience, visit blueorbythelake.substack.com and become a paid subscriber.